All right, I think we can go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone. We really appreciate y'all being here. My name is Hanlin. I'm a product manager working on AI/BI. And today I'm joined by Chao.
Hi, I'm Chao. I'm an engineer working on AI/BI as well.
And again, we really appreciate you all being here today. So as y'all saw during the keynote, we're incredibly excited to be announcing our brand new product line, AI/BI. This is really going to help democratize data and analytics for your business users. Now, there's two parts to this. There's the dashboards piece, and then there's Genie. And in today's section, we're gonna do a deep dive on Genie. So quick show of hands, who's played around with the product before in our private preview? Awesome, glad to see some familiar faces. And anyone else who's just found out about it this week and wants to learn more? Great, well, hopefully we can answer some questions in both camps. So Genie is a way for your business users to simply ask their data questions in natural language and get data insights right away. Our unique approach allows you to have direct guidance and control over the Gen AI responses, and also uniquely learns over time so that it grows with your data. Quick agenda for today. I'm first gonna talk about the motivation for Genie. Next, I'm gonna talk about the nuts and bolts for how exactly it works. So how do you set it up? What's the end user experience? And how exactly does Genie learn over time? Next, we're gonna go into a live demo where Chao's gonna show you how this works on real world data. And finally, we're gonna have a Q&A session. So let's first set the stage. Our mission at Databricks is to democratize data and AI for everyone, and not just your data teams, but your business user, your finance user, your marketing manager, and down the line. And so currently, these folks get data insights through a dashboard. Dashboards are great. They give you insights into the most important metrics and questions that you have, but the challenge is business users always have more. There's ad hoc ones that they need to do their job, and we touched on this on the keynote, but the only real workaround they have is to simply wait for a data team to add a new visualization to an existing dashboard that ends up looking like this mess here. And so folks are trying to apply LLMs to solve this problem. But the challenge that we see is that it currently depends heavily on a pre-existing semantic model, which you can imagine is just a dictionary for all the terms and definitions and metrics that exist at your company. There's two main challenges. First, is that's actually really hard to create a good semantic model. It takes a ton of time and effort to define every single little thing as a part of your team. The second challenge we see is that it's static. It doesn't evolve with your data. Your data and your semantics are constantly evolving over time, and that semantic model isn't gonna update itself. Just think about things from an actual data analyst. Would a real-life data analyst only refer to a preset dictionary of terms, or would they learn and grow with your data over time? So we took a step back and designed Genie to be more of a mini data analyst, a piece of yourself for your business users to use. There's three main principles we designed the solution to have. First is that it has to continuously learn over time. Again, your data and semantics are constantly going to evolve, and Genie has to adapt with it. The second principle is that it has to have controls. Gen AI is great. It can do a lot of really awesome things, but if you don't give it guidance and oversight, it's not really helpful. The last thing is that it has to be easy to use. Your business users should not need to understand SQL or know how to prompt engineer an LLM to get this thing to work. So we're super excited to be starting on this journey, and we're already seeing effects of this unique approach. The folks at Accolade were able to help their product managers better answer self-serve questions because Genie was able to understand the concepts and relationships that made Accolade unique. So now that we've set the stage, I want to actually talk about how this thing works. There are a current set of availability and access requirements. Right now, we're super excited to be an ungated public preview on AWS and Azure clouds, and GCP will be coming soon. Unity Catalog is also required for the underlying data, and serverless or ProSQL warehouses are required to power your queries. We are also really excited to announce that this will be free outside of the warehouse cost accrued into GA. So you're not gonna get charged for enabling Genie or setting up Genie experiences for your users. Awesome, so how does this actually work? The first piece is that data teams, those who know the most about your data, are tasked with setting up topic-specific Genie spaces. So there's not a product that comes out of the box and can simply answer every question under the sun, understand all your data, and just magically work. What we've seen is that Gen AI is actually a lot more effective if you give it a specific topic to work on. So as an example, let's just say I'm a sports apparel company. I'm gonna set up one Genie space for my sales data, as you can see on the right, and I'll have a separate one for maybe my logistics information, tracking packages. I'm gonna go into each of these spaces and teach Genie how to respond to questions in both of these. That leads into the next piece, which is that business users can now get answers to net new questions. They're no longer limited by a preset list of visualizations of sales over XYZ bucket. They can now aggregate over the information from Genie and answer their ad hoc questions when they come up. And finally, the last piece is that Genie learns over time by sitting on our data intelligence platform. I'm going to touch on each of these fundamentals now. So first, as a data analyst, how do I actually set up a Genie space? The high-level process is as follows. After you pick a specific topic, you're going to teach Genie about this topic's data. You're going to teach it by bringing in a focused set of tables that have good Unity catalog metadata. Next, you're going to teach Genie about this topic's business jargon and unique terms through the concepts of general instructions and sample SQL statements. I'm going to show how each of these steps look in a second. But after you set this thing up, the best thing you can do is actually just test it with users. We've seen a lot of our private preview customers just give it to a couple trusted business users and have them get value out of the product. That feedback with the actual end user is what's really going to be helpful information to improve your instructions and your sample SQL statements. Great, so let's first touch on the underlying data. You don't need to limit yourself by topic. It's not just for finance data or sales data. It can work on a variety of different things. But no matter what you do, you have to have a focused set of tables. If you bring in extra information that's going to confuse the LLM and you only want to define it for the topic itself. The second thing you want is really good column and table descriptions. This is how Genie is able to learn about your data. If you don't have column descriptions, it's going to be really hard for it to understand these random column names. As an example, you can see on the left, we have a column named owner ID. On surface level, this is pretty ambiguous, right? Like, does this refer to an owner of a store, the owner of the opportunity from a customer perspective? What does it mean? If I define that it's specifically the salesperson who owns this opportunity, Genie is now going to be able to understand this information and apply it to all questions. So if I ever ask about sales representatives, it understands this from this context. We also suggest creating materialized views, which is a way for you to remove excess columns and also clean your data before bringing it into Genie. Again, just to reiterate, good data is the bedrock of making Genie successful. So now that Genie understands your data, it needs to understand your business jargon. So there's a lot of different terms and things that your business users might refer to that Genie may not be able to understand just from the data. As an example, for my sports apparel sales data, a lot of business users might just refer to things as sales, right? But in reality, no one just has a blanket sales table inside of their data. It's probably called opportunities or random things like that. And so I, as the data analyst who knows about this space, can teach Genie just like I would teach an actual data analyst who maybe just started, right? I can tell it specifically that sales refers to opportunities that have a stage name 1. And so that's the definition of sales, and now Genie can learn from this and aggregate this information to all future questions. So if I ever ask about sales over a region, or sales for a customer, or sales for, I don't know, a specific time period, it can use this in definition for all questions. And so the next way you can teach Genie is actually just giving it sample SQL. So if you have existing query objects in your workspace, you can simply copy those in, and Genie can learn from this. But what's really powerful is you can actually do this iteratively. So let's just say I'm a data analyst, and I'm typing things in, and I'm working on this on my space, and I see maybe a response that was just a little bit off, right? Something that was just missed by a teeny bit from Genie. I, as a data analyst, can actually go in and edit this SQL statement so that it learns from this and then save it as an instruction. What this button will do is it teaches Genie, hey, this is where you messed up. This is the right way to answer the question. And then Genie can learn from this context and apply it to all future questions. Now that you've prepared a Genie space that understands your data and your business jargon, you can give it to your business users to use. We're super excited to hear this type of feedback already. The folks over at Vattenfall Hydro were able to make a Genie space available for their business stakeholders, who are then able to make data-driven decisions about their electricity markets from a Genie space. Again, the main value add end users get is the ability to ask and answer net new data questions. They're going to be able to engage Genie with a chat UI that's really awesome, that keeps your conversation history and understands the different follow-up questions that you ask. And you get insights through tables, so the actual query result, or actually visualizations as well. The next thing that end user can do is actually provide feedback and teach Genie. Let's be honest, the business users are probably the ones who have a lot of the high-level semantic understanding that isn't populated yet, right? And they're the ones asking for the KPIs in the first place. We want to be able to give them a path to help the experience so that the next business user, the other users on the platform, can also benefit from this information. We also understand that data teams want to understand how people are actually using the product, right? And so we created the monitoring page. All the different questions your users are asking to the space gets populated in this tab here, So as a data analyst, I can proactively go in, see what's going on, and say, hey, maybe these types of questions it struggles with. You can also deep dive into a specific conversation thread so I can actually see how Genie reacted to follow-up questions. So I'm sure at this point in the talk, a lot of y'all are wondering, how exactly does this thing learn over time? And so there's two main ways. First is that Genie is actually designed to ask follow-up questions. So in the example on the right, a user simply asked, what customers have churned? And now there isn't a churn column in my data. There's not a column that says churn customer. And maybe as a data analyst, I simply just haven't defined that as a piece of business context yet. Genie recognizes that it has a knowledge gap and asks the business user, hey, I don't understand what churn means. Can you tell me what the actual definition is? I, as a business user, understand that churn specifically means a customer bought something 2 months ago and hasn't bought anything since. I can upload this semantic understanding to Genie, and then Genie's going to be able to give a response that captures this new semantic knowledge. What's really powerful, though, is actually you can teach Genie for other users with the Save as an Instruction button. So when you click Save as an Instruction, it captures this context and also captures the SQL statement so that the next user who comes in can capitalize off this churn knowledge. The next way that we can learn over time is by leveraging our data intelligence platform. We already covered how Unity catalog information is automatically added. And so any changes that happen at the table level, so when you have new columns, when you add a new column description, that all gets captured by Genie. And in the long term, we really want to also capture the other great things that we have on our platform. You have your query history, you have your dashboard, these notebooks, and these other really valuable assets that could be really helpful to making Genie more successful. We've taken the first step of making this dream a reality by allowing you to directly create a Genie space from a dashboard. So all the context from there goes into a Genie space, and then you can ask follow-up questions. So that covers a bit of the basics of how Genie works. I'm now going to hand it over to Chao to show you this in real time.
All right. Just to make this a little more fun, if anyone has questions at any time, feel free to interrupt me. I think Miranda in the back over there has a microphone, so raise your hand if you want to ask a question. So let's take a look at what we're doing here. All right, so here I have some data. Before that, let me just tell you who I am. Pretend I am not an engineer. I am a newly hired sales analyst into AcmeCo, a made-up company that we just created for the purpose of this demo. AcmeCo has decided all of their sales leaders have too many questions, and they don't have the time to answer all those questions. So they now need a sales analyst to answer them. Oh, wait, hold on. They now need a sales analyst to create a bot to answer all those questions so that they don't have to do it themselves. So the data we're working with is Salesforce data. Sorry? Zoom in a little bit. Yeah, good call. There you go. If I can actually do that. Command plus, right, you got the other thing. Okay, here we go. All right, hopefully everyone can see this. I've got a bunch of data here. Pretty messy Salesforce data, as some of you who have worked with it can probably attest to. There's an opportunities table, which is where the main interesting stuff is. It has all sorts of fun columns. Notice that nothing has comments, so that's helpful. There's probably some extra columns here that I might or might not need. If I go back, I will be able to see that there's a bunch of other tables. Great, but the key thing here is a bunch of tables, bunch of columns, might or might not be useful to the Genie there. So what we did was we created a view on top. Importantly, the view has a bunch of columns, fewer columns than before, which is nice, but also the more important thing is it has the comments that Hanlin was talking about. It has comments like, for example, who was the owner? This is going to be useful. It has comments like, what are the stages? And what are the currently active stages that we're using? So that the LLM doesn't go off and dream up new stages on their own. So with that, let's actually create a baby Genie. All right, so I'm going to go to create here. Hit create for the Genie space. And remember, this is something that you're going to want to hand over to a bunch of folks who don't know SQL. And have them be able to use it. They're going to need to find this. Very similar to needing to find a dashboard. So you want to give it a nice descriptive title, something like sales opportunity, sales analysis based on Salesforce plus and Excel data. Something that gives them a sense for, hey, what are we doing here? I'm going to just pick a warehouse that we can be using. And here, the opportunity table is already brought in because I brought it in from Catalog Explorer. But we're going to need more tables than that. We're going to need all the tables in that schema. And so I'm just going to quickly check all of these. And voila. Okay. So I'm going to skip the sample questions. You can come back to this later. But that's a way for you to be able to prompt your business users with some things that they might want to ask as a way to get started. We can come back to that later. You can always configure that later. So here is an empty Genie space with a bunch of tables set up. As you can see, there's a bunch of columns here. There's a bunch of things you can do here. There's the chats. There's instructions. I'll get to what these are in a minute. There's the data, where you can actually review what are the tables that you've brought in and what are the columns. The monitoring tab, I can talk about a little later, but this is basically a way, once you've handed it over to your business users, to be able to see what they're actually doing with it. You can see all the questions that they're asking. You can see what Genie has responded in return, and you can try to verify whether they're right or not. And finally, settings, where you can go and configure, add more tables, add sample questions, etc. So I'm just going to get started. One of the best practices that we're going to do here is don't even bother with adding more instructions. Like, don't even bother with trying to give it more hints off the bat. Just start asking questions. So things that you should expect a Genie space to be able to do pretty well upfront are things like top and bottom queries. Like, what is the biggest opportunity I've ever had? And it should think for a little while. It should go and find the opportunity table. And as you can see here, it's first sort of trying to generate a query, and now it's talking to the warehouse and actually running it. So you can inspect the generated code. If you speak SQL, you can inspect the generated code. You can take a look at this and say, okay, is it polling for the right things? Is it doing the right order by, limit, etc.? So great, seems like it's doing well. Every time I do this run through, I get a little lazier. So instead of actually asking full sentences, I'm just gonna say smallest. And it has the context from the previous question so that it should know I'm actually asking, what is the smallest opportunity I've ever had? And as you can see, it managed to pull it. You can again verify that the main thing that it did was change the order by. Okay, I can also do things like averages. What was the average amount? So simple top bottom, simple counts, and then simple selects. Those should all work out of the box, as long as you have good comments and you can actually teach it to get to the right places. So this again is correct. It's just doing the average of the amounts here. I can also ask it for a select question, right? Like, for example, I have some industries listed in the opportunity somewhere. So I can say, what are all of the industries that my opportunities are a part of? And with any luck, it should do the right select, count distinct, or select distinct, and let's see what it does. Yeah, so here it says select distinct industry from accounts, join opportunities. So because it has enough information from the table and column comments, it's able to figure out that there's a join here to get that information. Okay, and of course I can do things like how many salespeople are in each region. So again, hopefully a simple join. Let's see what it does. Let's see if it generates the right answer. All right, this is helpful, but hey, I have a no here. Why do I have a no? Who's in no region? Okay, all right, so let me get rid of that no. That might be an acceptable answer, but you might want to clean that up. So this is where I would pop over to instructions and say something like, always filter out nulls. So the instructions area is effectively a plain text box that's serving as a local sort of semantic model of sorts, but in English for the room. So you can give it instructions to do things like always filter out nulls. Now, notice that there's a banner that says start a new chat. Sometimes the context of the current chat might actually trip it up. So I'm just gonna start a new one and ask the same question again, which is how many salespeople are in each region? And with any luck, that null should go away. Go away null. Let's see. Okay, perfect. And as you can see, the main thing it did is it added a is not null there. And of course, we can visualize it as a pie chart just to troll our friend Josue back there. All right, and nice simple pie charts. Let's do something a little more complex. Let's try something like how many opportunities were won? The reason why this is a little more complex is because the notion of one is actually defined by a specific table cell value inside the stage thing that I showed before. So let me actually pull that back up here. So if you looked at the data that we had before in shared views, opportunity, here the stage name definition actually says the current stage of the opportunity. Currently used values are discovery, demo, validation, procure, close won, close lost. This gives Genie the awareness that these are the valid values to match for. So if I go back here, it says, okay, one probably matches to close one. And that's exactly what it does. It does a where clause and equals to close one. I can also do the same thing. How many were lost? And hopefully it will match against X close lost. Okay, that works correctly. Great. Okay, so another potential thing you might want to ask are something like which team had them. Oops, actually, let me do this one first. Let me do how much in sales did I have in 2023? Now, the context behind this, the semantic context that you might not have told Genie about yet is I only want to count something as a sale if it was close won. Luckily, let's take a look at the code here. Yeah, okay, it didn't do that. So great, I can teach it. So I can say only count sales that are closed won. Okay. So let's actually try, I think this might work even if I just try to refresh it. So I'm not even gonna, again, let me see. Okay, yeah. So there's a refresh button here. Let's see if it will generate the right word clause now. Again, so the theme here is iterate with the common questions that your business users think your business users are going to ask, and try to see what it does. And wherever you detect that it doesn't have enough context, add that context into the instructions. Yeah, go for it. Yeah. Great question. The thumbs up, thumbs down, as of now, are used for two purposes. One is if you are a business user, if you're the viewer of the room rather than the editor, the thumbs up, thumbs down will actually feed into this monitoring tab where there's a rating column and you can filter by which questions were thumbs up, which questions were thumbs down. And that tells the analyst who's setting up the room, hey, you might want to pay attention to this question and go and see if it's generating the right answer. The other thing that it does is in aggregate, it tells us, Databricks, hey, are we doing well over time on these kind of things? So today, we're not yet teaching the model directly based on that feedback, but we reserve the right to later. Yep. Another question over there. Do you want to shout or do you want a mic? Yeah. Yep. I will show you that in a minute. All right. Okay, any other questions?
Questions till the end. We'll have a Q&A time.
Okay. Actually, no, I mean, we'll do a few intercepts, but I will cut it off in a minute. Let me run off a little more in case this is already gonna get answered. Okay, so the last question was how much sales did I have? Again, like I said, by adding the instruction of saying only count sales that are close won, it learned that, oh, I should probably add a filter by stage name equals 5.closewon. Okay, so let's do another interesting thing here. Which team had the most sales in 2023? And the reason for this to be interesting is in order to get the team information, we're doing a somewhat unorthodox join. And you'll see what I mean in a minute. All right, so there's no teams. Well, of course there are teams. So what happened here? All right, so if you inspect the SQL, I'm gonna make the instruction box a little smaller so you can see this. It's naively trying to join o.ownerid to t.user. That would be nice if t.user was an ID, except thanks to the magic of Excel, t.user is a name. It's a pure string, so you can't quite do that join. So after inspecting the data or something, you might figure this out. Actually, I'm just gonna copy the previous line here. So what I can do here is directly edit the SQL to your earlier question, and say, okay, instead of doing whatever you were doing before, I'm going to actually join to two tables. You need to join by user first. And then you join by teams, except instead of joining by ID, you need team.user equals user, t.user equals u.name. You gotta join by name. Let's see if that works. So instead of having to go and figure out the SQL elsewhere and write it elsewhere, you can actually just write it here, and it works. So the thing you can do on top of that is now you can save it as an instruction. I don't even need to actually write it out anymore. I can just save it. It shows up here. You can inspect it. It basically says, whenever I ask which team had most sales, this is the SQL that was correct for it. And this now gets used as a hint for Genie to use for all of the other questions that you ask. So now I can ask something like, which team had the most sales in 2024? And it will hopefully not get it wrong again. Thinking. There we go. Okay, so the generated code had the same join, so promising. Very cool. Okay, and that's one way to do it. You can do example SQL. The other way you can do it, by the way, is if I delete this example SQL query. Actually, let me see. Can't find the delete button. That's okay. I'll come back to this later. All right. So the next thing I'm going to do is ask it a even more complicated question. So by the way, the thing I wanted to show is you can either give the instruction as a example SQL, as I've done here. The other way you can do it is you can actually just add a plain text instruction that says something like team.user always joins to user.name. The reason to maybe do that is if you have something that's easier to describe in English, you can do that. But the SQL will be a little more precise in many cases, and I'll show you another case of this. The third way to do this, and this is what we encourage long-term, but you might or might not have access to do this initially, is to actually declare the primary key, foreign key relationship in the underlying Unity catalog table. If you have that, Genie will pick that up, and it should always get it right. But if you don't have it, this is sort of the workaround until you get around to doing that. Okay. Let's try something else. Let's try something that it shouldn't have any right to know. So which team had the most sales? Again, very similar query, but except I'm going to ask for fiscal year 2023. Now it needs to figure out what a fiscal year is. So with any luck, it probably found the period table and said, oh, there's fiscal year information in the period table because we had good enough comments there. But it's probably not yet smart enough to do the right joins to get it. So as you can see, empty results. What went wrong here? So this is a good example where you want the SQL rather than English in explaining the general instructions because the SQL involved is pretty messy. So as you can see, there's a bunch of joining here. The SQL involved in getting the right join is actually to match o.closeDate in between p.start and p.end. Great. So that part it actually got right, which is nice. But the part that it got wrong is, as I specified FY 2023 without a space, and the data actually had a space in it, and it needs to be an exact match. So if I do this, it should do it correctly. But then the nice thing is, once I actually fix it once, okay, great, and save it, this will get used for all the future queries. Things like if I ask like, which teams had the least sales in FY24, it should know, oh, I need to insert a space in the middle. So let's take a look at what happens. Let me show you. Okay, great. It generated the right queries, inserted the right space in the middle. Perfect. So let me see what else. Okay, so one last thing before we open it up for any brief questions. You can also teach Genie about all the esoteric metrics that and acronyms that your organization has that I'm sure no standard LLM is going to know. So I'm just going to make an acronym on the spot. Let's say, I think one of the stages was called demo. Demo pipeline expected value, acronym as DPEV. What was the DPEV for 2023? Should know this. I would say, yeah, okay. So luckily, it didn't try to guess at all. It just sort of gave up. It said, okay, I don't know what a DPEV is. None of your schema has it. So you got to tell me what it is before I can do anything with it. So we can actually directly tell Genie what it is in the chat without even having to edit instructions directly by saying something like, okay, DPEV is demo pipeline expected value calculated as the expected value of all opportunities in stage demo. And with that, it hopefully has enough information to get going. All right, one quick question right here. Yes.
You want to limit the amount of information that the model needs to work with and
Yep.
learn with, right?
Mm-hmm.
So two questions. The first one is like, do you have some guidance
Yeah.
in terms of the tools, current state, like
Yep.
what is the maximum amount of information or tables, et cetera? That's the first
Yeah.
question.
Mhm.
Second question is, I presume in the future is like, you don't even need to specify the tables. It's just the data, all the data you have in Databricks that has some kind of tier 1 status or something. So second question is, when will that happen?
Right, okay, so I'm gonna answer those in order. The first question, rule of thumb, today we recommend on the order of, let's say, less than 10 tables, couple hundred columns together. We are working on increasing that limit, of course, because as we introduce sort of ways to basically prune that as we go based on what you're asking for. But the one thing I would still suggest is make sure that your room is sort of focused. Make sure it's focused on a particular topic rather than saying, like every single question across finance and marketing and sales, et cetera. There's two reasons for this. One is sort of keeping it focused so that you're able to actually get the space to sort of really answer precise questions without confounding topics that might be similar but ambiguous across different domains. The other is access. You might not want everyone to have access to everything. Today, if you're looking at this setup, we respect your Unity catalog permissions. So we actually require that you as a user coming in have access to every single table that's listed in the room in order to use the room. Otherwise, what if we come up with a query that accesses 3 of the tables and one of them you didn't have access to? Then it'd be a pretty bad experience. So from an access perspective, you probably don't have a particular person other than maybe the admin that has access to every single table in the company. So that's why the focused spaces are useful. Yes.
Hi,
yes,
everyone. Sorry.
There's
Real
another
quick,
one back there.
for questions, if you can raise your hand, Miranda and I will pass you the mics, and then once you get the mic, you'll be next in queue.
Okay.
If that works.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Palak. So, is
more
Genie currently tied to any LLM models in the backend?
It is.
If yes, can we change that if we want to?
It is. We do not allow folks to change it because we are considering that sort of part of the implementation detail, and over time we actually want to choose whatever is the best LLM that we're seeing working for everyone. And so we will be swapping it in and out based on what we believe to be the best LLM, based on the performance that we're seeing across everyone. One more question, and then I'm going to wrap things up. Go for it. Oh, yes,
Oh,
ma'am.
sorry.
Yep.
Okay, I was just had a question. Will you put this, always filter out nulls? Is that going to go across every column that you have and filter out? If it has a null in it, it's going to, not just that one column.
That's right. That's right. It's doing it
and-
across everything. Yeah.
And is there any way for the users to override any of this? Like you say, only count cells that are closed one. If they wanted to look at some non-closed ones.
Yeah, they can ask they can ask the question. I mean, like for example, if you define sales to be close one, you can say like I would like opportunity amounts that are not close one. Like just ask a different metric, for example, or they
That's
can
right.
define it.
Okay, so these are on a specific metric on this
Exactly.
left side.
This is basically saying I have a sales metric. I define it as
Okay.
amount that is close one.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Actually, was there a quick question in the back? Yeah, we'll do one more, and then we're gonna run over to the rest of it.
Yeah, it was just associated with like how you hard coded the types.
Yeah.
Is that like short term? Like you're looking, are you going to be doing analysis in the future for?
You mean specifically like listed out the enum values for that station?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so we have a feature coming soon where we'll be sort of inspecting those enum values directly from the data, so you don't have to do it. But like one of the benefits of that is, in addition to saying what are the enum values in the data, sometimes there's just data that's garbage in there, right? Like so it's good to specify what is the subset that I actually care about right now. Okay, all right, I'm gonna close this out. So as I mentioned, demo pipeline expected value is null. Okay, well, okay, let me see. Some amount probability, close date. Okay, oh, I guess we didn't have any data in that time. All right, let me change that to, what was the DPAP for 2024? Let's try that instead. And hopefully that'll work. Cool. All right, so you get a number there. And the nice thing is, now that you've defined a metric, you can use it across whatever you want. One other thing I'll mention is, right now, when you answered Genie with, okay, here's how I'm defining demo pipeline expected value, it will remember that for the context of this chat. But if you go to another chat, it will forget it again. In order to save it, similar to what we did before, you just sort of save one of the returned results as an instruction. And now, if I start another chat, I should still be able to ask about demo pipeline expected value. So let's try that. How much DPEV did I have in each region in 2024? So it should remember it and say, okay, demo pipeline expected value is this result. There we go. Okay, let's take a look at the generated code. Oh, interesting. That is, as you can see, live demos with an LLM, fraught with danger. Let's try again. I don't think I'll recover as well as Casey did this morning, but we will try anyways. All right, let's see. Okay, perfect. Now we get a nice result here. Again, I can visualize it. I'll use a pie chart, and perfect. Okay, so with that, before we get to another minute or so of questions, I'm gonna actually go over one more slide. These are the advanced features that we are in the middle of building and rolling out. So the first one is certified answers. These are basically for scenarios where you have a mission critical question, maybe you're delivering it to your CEO, and you're basically telling the LLM, hey, I don't care what the underlying context is. I don't care how good your inference skills are. If you see this question, answer with the SQL. And so this is a way to basically stamp an answer as certified with a pair of natural language question to SQL in the product, we will then have a green badge that says this answer is certified and anyone can trust it. The second is canonical metrics. You'll hear a bit about this a little bit more tomorrow, but basically this is a way for us to define metrics in a place, hopefully outside of a particular Genie space, where you can actually share it across a bunch of Genie spaces, pull it in, and be able to say, okay, every time I want unique users, I want this definition. Every time I want a particular ratio, I want this definition, et cetera. And finally, we know that because LLMs are finicky, you want to actually verify that they're right on an ongoing basis as you're working with these Genie spaces. So we're creating a way for you to effectively curate a set of validation questions and expected responses, and that becomes basically your test suite. That you can run as you add more instructions, as you get more usage, et cetera, on an ongoing basis so that you can actually make sure that things are still correct. With that, I think we are out of time, but I'm happy to take one or two last questions. Yeah, thank you.